Have you ever felt like, you're navigating English pronunciation, but with a wonky compass? You're speaking the words,
Yep.
but they're just not quite hitting the mark.
It's a very common challenge, I think, English pronunciation. That has so many nuances and, all those exceptions to the rule that even seasoned speakers can trip up sometimes.
Okay, so I'm not alone in feeling like I'm fumbling through a pronunciation maze sometimes.
Not at all. And the good news is there are some really proven strategies that you can use to really refine your pronunciation and start feeling more confident. Think of this deep dive as your pronunciation toolkit. We're giving you the tools to unlock clearer, more natural sounding English.
I love that, a toolkit. So where do we start building this pronunciation masterpiece? What's the first tool we should grab?
I think one of the most foundational techniques, and a personal favorite of mine, is shadowing. It might sound a bit strange at first, but trust me, it's a game changer.
Shadowing. It sounds kind of mysterious, like we're following someone in secret.
Well, in a way you are. Shadowing involves choosing audio with a clear speaker. Maybe a podcast you love, a YouTube video, or even a scene from a movie with an accent that you admire.
Okay, so we pick our pronunciation mentor, like a master chef whose recipe we're following.
Exactly. You listen closely to your chosen audio, and then you try to repeat what you hear as accurately as possible, mimicking the speaker's rhythm, their intonation, and even their pauses. It's like you're their shadow, echoing their every sound.
So it's not just about getting the individual words, right? It's about capturing the entire flow of their speech.
Precisely. You're training your ears to discern the subtle nuances of English pronunciation, and your mouth muscles to actually replicate those sounds.
Makes sense. It's like learning a dance by watching the choreographer's every move, and then stepping into their shoes and trying to match their grace.
That's a great analogy. And just like in dancing, practice makes perfect. The more you shadow, the more attuned you become to the nuances of pronunciation and the more natural your own speech will sound.
Okay, I'm adding shadowing to my pronunciation toolkit. What else is in there? I'm ready to get hands-on.
Let's move on to something a bit more playful. Remember those tongue twisters we all struggled with as kids? Well, they're not just for fun. They're actually fantastic pronunciation exercises.
Tongue twisters? Are you serious? I thought those were just silly word games.
They are silly, but they also serve a purpose. Think about it. Tongue twisters, they force you to articulate sounds that are often challenging for non-native speakers. They're like targeted workouts for your mouth muscles.
So while I'm contorting my tongue trying to say, she sells seashells by the seashore, I'm actually building pronunciation strength.
Exactly. By repeatedly practicing these tricky combinations of sounds, you're strengthening the muscles in your tongue, your lips, and your jaw, which gives you more control over those tricky sounds.
It's like doing reps at the gym, but for my mouth.
I like the way you think. And just like with physical exercise, repetition builds muscle memory. The more you practice those tongue twisters, the easier it becomes to pronounce those sounds clearly and confidently, even in everyday conversation.
Okay, I'm starting to see how those silly phrases can be secretly powerful. But what if I want to understand the why behind the sounds? Like the science of how it all works.
That's where the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA, comes in. It's like a secret decoder ring for pronunciation.
Ooh, a decoder ring. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think of it this way. The English alphabet we use for writing, it doesn't always accurately represent the sounds we make when we speak. The IPA, on the other hand, has a unique symbol for every sound in every language.
So it's like a universal language for understanding how words are pronounced, no matter what language you're speaking.
Exactly. And many dictionaries, especially online ones, include the IPA transcription next to the word, which means you can actually see the sounds and practice pronouncing them correctly.
Wait, so I can literally look up the blueprint for how to pronounce a word.
Yeah.
That changes everything.
It really does. The IPA might seem a bit intimidating at first, but it's a powerful tool for self-learning and pronunciation mastery.
This is blowing my mind. So the IPA is like the ultimate key to unlocking the sounds of any language.
You got it. And once you understand the basic principles of the IPA, you can apply it to any language you want to learn, which is incredibly empowering.
That's incredible. I'm definitely adding the IPA to my pronunciation toolkit. It's like having a superpower for deciphering sounds.
Absolutely. And speaking of superpowers, there's another tool in your pronunciation arsenal that can help you track your progress and fine-tune your pronunciation skills.
Okay, lay it on me. What's this secret weapon?
It's simpler than you might think. It's your own voice recorder.
Wait, you mean like recording myself speaking?
Exactly. I know it can feel a little awkward at first, but trust me, it's one of the most effective ways to identify your specific areas for improvement.
Yeah.
Think of it as having your own personal pronunciation coach, available 24/7.
Okay, so how does this voice recording magic work? What are the steps?
First, choose a short passage or a sentence from your chosen pronunciation model. It could be a line from a movie, a sentence from a podcast, anything with clear audio. Then record yourself reading that same passage, trying to match the speaker's pronunciation as closely as possible.
So I'm basically creating my own before and after pronunciation track.
Exactly. Then listen back to both recordings, theirs and yours, and compare. Pay attention to the differences in pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. You might be surprised by what you hear.
I can imagine. It's like holding up a mirror to your own pronunciation habits, warts and all.
That's a great way to put it. It can be a bit humbling, but it's also incredibly insightful. You'll start to notice those subtle differences, like maybe you're not quite hitting a particular vowel sound correctly, or maybe your word stress needs a little adjustment.
So it's about turning those cringe moments into moments. I can get behind that.
Exactly. Recording yourself allows you to pinpoint those specific areas where you need to focus your efforts. And don't worry, it's not about being perfect. Even native speakers use this technique to refine their pronunciation for presentations or recordings.
So it's a technique used by the pros. That makes me feel a little better about trying it. But it's not just about individual sounds right. There's also the rhythm and flow of English, the way the words dance together.
You're absolutely right. And that's where we'll pick up in our next segment, exploring the secrets of word stress and rhythm.
Okay, I'm hooked. Can't wait to delve into those rhythmic mysteries. Stay tuned, language learners. We're back and ready to tackle those tricky elements of English, like word stress and rhythm.
Yeah, those are crucial. I mean, think of it like this: English words. They aren't pronounced in a flat, monotone way. Certain syllables within a word are stressed or emphasized more than others. And it's kind of like a subtle beat that gives the language its musicality.
Okay, I can see how that would add a whole new dimension to pronunciation.
Right.
But how do we know which syllables to stress? I mean, do we need to memorize a bunch of complicated rules?
Well, there are some patterns, but the best way to really learn word stress is by listening to native speakers and paying attention to how they emphasize different parts of words. And here's a fun trick. Try clapping along with a sentence as you say it.
Clapping, like we're at a poetry slam.
Well, maybe not quite that dramatic, but the idea is similar. Clapping helps you feel the natural rhythm of the sentence and makes those stress patterns more intuitive.
I love that. It's like turning pronunciation practice into a little dance.
Hmm.
But let's get specific. Can you give me an example of how word stress changes the meaning of a sentence?
Absolutely. Let's take the word present. Okay? It can be both a noun and a verb, and the stress changes depending on its grammatical role. Like if I say present with the stress on the first syllable, I'm talking about a gift. But if I say present with the stress on the second syllable, I mean the act of giving something.
Wow, you're right. The simple shift in stress completely transforms the word. It's like a secret code embedded in the language.
Exactly. And mastering word stress is essential for understanding and being understood in English. And it can also make your speech more dynamic and engaging.
Okay, I'm officially convinced that word stress is a pronunciation superpower. But what about rhythm? How do we make our English flow smoothly and naturally?
Well, rhythm in English, it's closely tied to word stress, but it also involves things like connected speech and intonation. Connected speech is how words flow together in natural, fast speech. Native speakers, they don't always pronounce every sound in every word separately. They tend to blend sounds together, especially when words are spoken quickly.
Like when people say gonna instead of going to, or wanna instead of want to. I always wondered about those.
Exactly. Those are classic examples of connected speech. And it's not just about individual words, it's about how phrases and sentences flow together. Like, for example, what do you want to do often becomes, what do you want to do?
Wow, I can hear how that makes the speech sound more natural and less choppy.
Exactly. It's like a river flowing smoothly around the rocks instead of crashing against them. And intonation, the way our voices rise and fall as we speak, adds another layer of rhythm and musicality to English.
Intonation is like the melody of our speech.
Yeah.
Right. It adds emotion and emphasis to the words.
Exactly. And mastering intonation is crucial for sounding natural and engaging. It's about conveying emotions, adding emphasis, and keeping your listeners hooked on your every word.
So it's about making our English sing, not just speak. But how do we learn to use intonation effectively? I mean, it seems it's such a subtle and nuanced aspect of pronunciation.
Well, the first step is to become aware of your own intonation patterns. Pay attention to how your voice naturally rises and falls as you speak. Do you tend to go up at the end of a question or down at the end of a statement?
I've never really thought about it before. But now that you mention it, I can hear those patterns in my own speech.
Exactly. And once you become aware of those patterns, you can start to refine them and make them more intentional. Listen to how native speakers use intonation to convey different emotions and ideas. Try mimicking their patterns and experimenting with different ways of emphasizing certain words.
It's like we're composing a symphony of sounds. And I'm guessing, like with any instrument practice, is key.
Absolutely. The more you experiment with intonation, the more natural and expressive your speech will become.
I love that. So we've added word stress rhythm, connected speech, and intonation to our pronunciation toolkit. What else can we do to sound more natural and confident when we speak English?
Well, let's talk about some quick tips and tricks that can make a big difference. First up, contractions. These are shortened forms of words that native speakers use all the time in casual conversation.
Oh, right, like saying I'm instead of I am or can't instead of cannot. They definitely make speech sound more relaxed and less formal.
Exactly. Contractions are all about blending sounds together and creating that effortless flow. For example, instead of saying she will not go, you would say she won't go.
She won't go, see? It just rolls off the tongue more easily. I can see how that would make a difference.
Right. And the more you practice using contractions, the more natural they will sound in your everyday conversations. Another tip is to pay attention to the sounds that are often dropped or blended in connected speech.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, think about the sentence, I am going to the store. In natural speech, it often sounds more like the G at the end of going is dropped and the words going to blend together.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's about training our ears to hear those subtle changes and our mouths to replicate them.
Exactly. And here's a fun one. Try exaggerating your mouth movements when you practice. Stand in front of a mirror and really over-enunciate those sounds. It might feel silly at first, but it's like a workout for your pronunciation muscles.
So it's like doing pronunciation reps at the gym. No pain, no gain. But seriously, I can see how that would help you become more aware of how you're forming the sounds.
Exactly. By exaggerating those movements, you're training your mouth to form the sounds more precisely, which will ultimately make your speech clearer and easier to understand.
I'm loving all these practical tips. It feels like we're building a solid foundation for pronunciation success.
We are. And remember, consistency is key. Even dedicating just 10-15 minutes each day to practicing these techniques can make a huge difference over time.
That's encouraging. So it's not about overwhelming ourselves with hours of practice. It's about making it a regular habit. But before we get into the habit forming stage, is there anything else we should keep in mind as we continue on this pronunciation journey?
Yeah, one final thought. Remember that learning pronunciation isn't just about sounding good. It's about connecting more deeply with the language, expressing yourself with confidence, and truly owning your voice.
That's beautiful. It's about so much more than just getting the sounds right. It's about unlocking the power of communication and expressing ourselves authentically.
Exactly. And with that in mind, let's shift our focus to something many English learners find particularly challenging, sounding like a native speaker.
Ooh, yes. This is the part I've been waiting for. Spill the secrets. What are the techniques that can help us bridge that gap and sound more natural and effortless?
We'll dive into those native speaker secrets and give you even more tools to boost your pronunciation confidence right after this.
Welcome back, pronunciation adventurers. We're about to unveil those secrets to sounding more like a native English speaker. I'm ready to unlock my inner linguistic chameleon. What's the first secret weapon in our arsenal?
Well, it's all about those subtle details that often go unnoticed, those tiny nuances that can make a big difference. Let's start with something called linking.
Linking. Intriguing. Tell me more.
Okay, so in connected speech, words don't always exist in isolation. They bump up against each other, and the sounds at the end of one word often influence the sounds at the beginning of the next word.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah,
Can you give me an example of how linking works in practice?
absolutely. Take the phrase baked apples. You might think you pronounce each word separately, but in natural speech, the D at the end of baked, it blends seamlessly with the vowel sound at the beginning of apples. It sounds more like bake apples.
Why? You're right. It's like the words are holding hands, creating a smooth and effortless flow.
Exactly. Linking is all about those subtle connections that make speech sound natural and less choppy. And here's another technique that can make a big difference. Elision.
Elision. That sounds a bit like a magic trick, like making a sound disappear.
And in a way it is. Elision is the omission of a sound or syllable when speaking. It happens all the time in fast speech, and it's one of the hallmarks of native-like pronunciation.
Okay, I'm ready for an example.
Think about the phrase, I don't know. In casual speech, it often gets shortened to, I don't know. The T sound in don't is elided, creating a smoother and more relaxed pronunciation.
I don't know. You're right. I hear that all the time. It definitely sounds more natural than enunciating every single sound.
Exactly. Elision is all about efficiency and ease of pronunciation. It's about streamlining those tricky sound combinations and making your speech flow effortlessly.
So we've got linking and elision. What other native speaker secrets can we add to our pronunciation toolkit?
Let's talk about assimilation. This is when a sound changes to become more similar to a neighboring sound. It often happens unconsciously, and it's another key ingredient in achieving a natural sounding accent.
Assimilation. I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like a lot of native-like pronunciation is about blending and adapting sounds to create a smoother flow.
You're spot on, and assimilation is a prime example of that. Think about the phrase, good girl. Okay? The D sound at the end of good often assimilates to the G sound at the beginning of girl, making it sound more like good girl.
Wow, you're right. It's like the sounds are morphing into each other, creating a harmonious blend.
Precisely. And these subtle shifts in pronunciation often happen without us even realizing it. But by becoming aware of these techniques, we can start to incorporate them into our own speech and sound more natural and confident.
This is all so fascinating. It's like we're peeling back the layers of the language and discovering its hidden mechanics. But before we get too lost in the technicalities, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the why behind all of this. Why should we even bother trying to sound more like a native speaker?
That's a great question. And I think it boils down to communicate connection and confidence. You know, when you can navigate the nuances of pronunciation and speak with greater clarity, you feel more empowered to express yourself fully.
I love that. It's about owning our voice and using it to connect with the world around us. It's about feeling confident and comfortable in our own skin, even when we're speaking a language that's not our native tongue.
Exactly. And while it's wonderful to embrace and celebrate the unique beauty of different accents, having a solid grasp of native-like pronunciation can open doors and create opportunities. It can help you feel more at ease in social situations, navigate professional settings with confidence, and connect with people from diverse backgrounds.
You're right. It's about expanding our horizons and breaking down communication barriers. It's about, feeling more confident and comfortable in our own skin, even when we're speaking a language that's not our native tongue.
Absolutely. And remember, achieving a native-like accent isn't about erasing your own unique voice. It's about expanding your linguistic repertoire and having the tools to adapt your speech to different contexts. It's about becoming a more versatile and confident communicator.
That's beautifully said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of English pronunciation, what's the key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
I think it's important to remember that every sound, every syllable, every intonation pattern, it's an opportunity to express yourself, connect with others, and create something beautiful. Embrace the journey, celebrate your progress, and never stop exploring the wonders of language.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, dear listeners, you don't have to go it alone on this pronunciation adventure. There are countless resources available to support you. Seek out those resources, connect with fellow language learners, and most importantly, keep practicing and having fun with it.
Have fun. I love that because ultimately language is about connection, expression, and joy, and that's something worth celebrating.
Cheers to that. And with those inspiring words, we'll bid you farewell for now. Until next time, happy pronouncing.